we have to highlight the local dynamics behind the spread of Wahhabism throughout the Muslim world, including in Indonesia. I mean, it is not simply about how Saudi spread Wahhabism and export Wahhabism to Indonesia. But the success story of spreading Wahhabism is not simply determined by Saudi's ambition to campaign the ideology to other countries in the Muslim world, but also the very dynamic of each country in the Muslim world, like in Indonesia, for instance. The Salafis in the 1980s, 1990s till 2000s, the first decade of 2000s is quite different from the Salafism today. Because of the changing context of politics in Indonesia and also throughout the world, beginning with the 9/11 and its repercussion in Indonesia also, try to limit the space for radical organization. They made also a campaign against radicalism, against terrorism. This somehow close space for maneuver for radical conservative organization, including the Salafis, spoken out by those in power and also by the society in Indonesia. That is why this is kind of natural reactions by the Salafis in Indonesia to move to the center. They are no longer reluctant to accept any symbols of Indonesian cultures. Before they wore consistently the jalabiyah, for instance, in their daily life or niqab. But today, the Salafis also adopted batik, the traditional clothing, which is typical to Indonesian. There is code, for instance, the pictures, for instance, yes, and they also try to attract followings from a younger generation of Indonesian. That is why they try to commodify their products, yes, in order to attract the attention from a younger generation of Indonesia. They also developed a radio station. It was from the 1990s. Later on, they developed television. Today, they develop social media, and they campaign their da'wah on social media, but no longer da'wah which is quite strict on Wahhabi way of life. There is still an element of Salafism in their movement, but it has been negotiated with localities, has been negotiated with democracy, with the state. They also adopt the dominant political system of the state. Yeah? And I think that is a good signal that the Salafis, the Wahhabis are not stubborn actors who only know how to spread the Wahhabi doctrine, but also dynamic actors who know how to adjust themselves into changing atmospheres and situation in each country. The spread of Wahhabism in Indonesia challenged the existing religious authorities in the country. Somehow they were collaborating each other to develop and interpret the meaning of Islam in Indonesia, the version of Islam. They determine what version of Islam which is legitimate in this country. When the Salafi came to Indonesia, it somehow challenged this existing religious authority in the country, the establishment, the religious establishment. That's why somehow, there is a kind of resistance from the two established Muslim organization in the country against the Salafism, in order for them to maintain somehow their dominance, their privilege in determining the legitimate version of Islam in this country. We don't really have the so-called proper management of religious diversity. In our regulation, for instance, there are still some overlapping rules governing the religious diversity. And sometimes also because the majority of Indonesians are Muslims, they receive a kind of privilege, yeah, and significant support from the government at the expense of the minority groups and smaller cultural groups in the society, for instance. We expect actually some scholars in Indonesia expect very much the more proper management of religious diversity. This is not so much related to Wahhabism, which is spread in this country, but more, I think, the state policy, how to manage this diversity. Yeah, it is quite complicated actually. They try to now revitalize the Pancasila, impose again the Pancasila as an answer to intolerance problem in the country, but is it really the answers? We don't know yet. Yes, the result. We are still observing what happened. But what I do believe is actually the largest country. I mean, the big country like Indonesia with so many diverse ethnicities, religion, and so on. We really need proper management of religious diversity, and it is the internal problem again. Of course, there are some influence of Wahhabism into the fact that Indonesia has experienced growing intolerance because they develop strict ideology. They develop like al-wala wal-bara to to distinguish Muslims with non-Muslims, and they try to impose the identity politics and so on and so forth. That also play a role somehow in the growing intolerance in the country. But this is does not stand alone. It is very much related with other factors like the internal dynamic of contestation among various elements of Indonesian Muslim, and also related very much with management of religious diversity in a broader context.